Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. Welcome, James.
Dan, great to be with you again.
Absolutely, very exciting. And today we've got a very exciting one because a lot of people, myself included, will spend hours binge watching Netflix and streaming platforms, but won't necessarily spend hours on a Netflix set, right?
Most people.
Are you a binger? Would you say you're a binger?
I think if the show is right, I'm definitely a binger. I mean, I can just keep pressing next if I'm sucked in. Love it. Love a bit of Netflix. But the chance of actually getting to see the inside of a show like that is kind of what we're talking about today. And we're going to talk to someone who's been, who's lived on a Netflix big budget set and was a part of all that, and is a fantastic teacher for Young Film Academy. And we're kind of going to try and unpick this idea of, actually, is it all that different? If you've got all that money, how different is it actually from the kind of film that you might go out and make as a student? Because I think there's loads of ways in which maybe it's not so different. What are you expecting to hear? What do you think we're going to get from this?
I would imagine it's exactly the same thing as a student film, except everyone is wearing Balenciagas on their feet. That's what I reckon.
I'm sure that is what Netflix says.
That's where all the money goes, right? It's just on like quality footwear.
And I think what's really important about this, apart from the footwear, is that I think there is that feeling. We're going to do an episode. I think we've talked about doing kind of the cavalry's not coming at some point, but that feeling that at some point you get to a point where you've got money and resources, and that the problems end, and it's all sweet and plain sailing. And I think we're going to hear from Ben and find out if that's true or not.
No, yeah, absolutely. I have a hunch that it never ends, or the pain never ends, and the fun never starts. The fun never starts. I'm joking. It's always fun.
Pain is temporary. Film is forever, Dan.
Film is forever, and that's where the magic comes in, right? Absolutely. Right. Well, without any further ado, let's say hi to Ben. Welcome, Ben. How's it going?
Good afternoon. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. It's a nice-ish day.
Great to have you with us, Ben. We are really excited to talk to you about the Netflix show that we know you worked on and were a part of for a long time. And we'd love to sort of unpick that experience a little bit and maybe draw some comparisons to, maybe student films and how they're different or the same. So tell us a little bit about the Netflix show you were a part of and how that came about.
Sure. So the Netflix film is a third feature from a British-Iranian director named Babak Anvari. The film is called I Came By, which should be coming out on Netflix within the next few months. I was told second quarter of 2022, all going well. And as I say, this is his third feature, so he actually won, I believe it was Best Breakthrough at the BAFTAs for his first feature, which is called Under the Shadow. So how it came about, I would say there was a level of nepotism to it. But when I say nepotism, I don't mean my actual family. I mean my film family from networks that I achieved while studying at the National Film and Television School. So I did a master's in directing at the NFTS, and there were a good few people who had already been on the project for a few weeks before I came on, who were friends from various either the producing courses at the NFTS or the production managing courses at the NFTS. So basically, because I had a decent network of people who were already working in the industry, I kind of gave them the old nudge of, can you put my CV at the top of the pile, because I'm currently looking for director's assistant gigs, and slip them a $5 or whatever, and they put the CV at the top.
Is that standard amount, or do you normally have to put 10 in, just in case people wanted to?
I start off with 5, and then if they say no, then just slowly increase it until you get the job.
And what is director? Just tell us, what is a director's assistant? What is that?
So a director's assistant is slightly different from an assistant director, which is very confusing to everyone I tell about, especially my parents. They still don't understand what the difference is. But I suppose a director's assistant is more in line with the typical duties of a personal assistant in terms of your managing diaries, you're scheduling meetings, you're overseeing the director's other projects and making sure that everything's being kept on top of for them. You are booking accommodation, you're transporting the director, and those are all the kind of the PA, the personal assistant sides of the gig. But then also, if you're fortunate enough to have a director hire you who really appreciates your creative input, then you'll also be involved in, all of the meetings in terms of script coverage, rehearsals, and giving feedback on kind of everything to do with the creative aspects of things as well. And
so you're kind of like shadowing the director.
Well, I mean, I am with the director by their sides 100% of the project. So from day one, the director began pre-production straight through until post-production. I was his right-hand man. So everything that he saw in terms of every meeting that he was in, was it with Netflix execs, his cinematographer, the production designer, the actors, everything. I was there for it all. So as a burgeoning director myself, it's like I can't think of a better experience to have someone who's a good few levels ahead of you, being able to see what it's like. What it's like for them doing that job at that scale,
So you got to kind of have all the actual experience of that environment and being a part of it, but kind of without the responsibility of actually having to do the creative bit of being the director. But you could sort of see it and be part of it. That's an amazing thing to have done. And how long was the overall shoot and the experience? How long were you involved in the project for?
So I began on the project in April of 2021, and I finished up in October. So it was a good chunk of the year. I was in it for the entirety of the summer, pre-production, and for the whole shooting period as well.
That's brilliant. And give us a sense of what is the show, what's it about, and sort of where is it shot, so we get a flavour of it.
So it's a film which is set in London, which follows 2 graffiti artists who go into well-off people's homes and they tag them. And the story begins with one of the artists finding a rather horrific secret that one of these well-off people has kept in their basement, and that sets off a rather outrageous chain of events. So it's a horror thriller film which is tonally setting itself within a lot of Hitchcockian references mixed in with a lot of neo-noir references. So a little bit like Hitchcock meets Seven, David Fincher's Seven. So very atmospheric, very creepy, and very dark. Very dark.
And is it going to be a series or is it a one-off?
It's a one-off feature film. Yeah.
That's cool. Rough size of budget?
I'm not actually sure I can tell you. I don't know.
Okay.
But you probably have
give us a
numbers
ballpark.
as opposed to like online where it's sort of like estimated budget. You're probably in all the meetings where it's like, well, it's exactly,
Yeah. So I suppose it would be classified as technically low budget for that scale, but when we say low budget, it's kind of anywhere between 1 million and about 8, 9, 10 million. So you hear those figures as a young person and hear that that's a low budget film. It's a rather outrageous thing to comprehend, but that is the lower, certainly with Netflix, that's sort of the lower end of the budget scale.
So and was this sort of closer to the upper end of that range? Just to give us a sense, or the lower end of that range?
Let's say closer to the upper end. Yeah,
closer to the upper end.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at quite a lot of millions, but not more than £10 million budget.
Yeah.
For a film, right? And there you are, you're the director's assistant and you're part of it, you're living it, breathing it day in, day out. And I think this entire episode came out of something you mentioned to us, Ben, which is that you said, I remember you saying to me when we were talking about this experience, and you said, one of the things you were struck by was that it kind of all of the same issues that you get on a student film, you get on this set with all of so much more resources and money. And you just realize it's the same stuff, just bigger. Mm-hmm. And so it would be great if we could kind of unpick that a little bit and by doing that, get under the skin of what it feels like to be in that environment. So what were your kind of first impressions when you were first thrown into that? Like, what did you feel about it?
I remember the first day was, we were straight into location scouting for this hero house, the hero location. And when I say hero, we just kind of mean it's the very important, the main location of the film, which was a exceptionally affluent manor, shall we say. And we were looking at quite a few, driving around, looking at all these beautiful houses. And what struck me was that when we were going in and looking around them, the recce, and the recce being just all of your team visiting the location, looking at it, thinking, how could we make this work creatively and technically for the film? Everything that was happening was just exactly the same as films that I've worked on in the past. And so I've never, ever made anything even close to the scale of millions of pounds in a film. The largest budget I've ever directed was, I think, somewhere around £30,000, and then obviously all the way down to making films for absolutely nothing. And I was just struck by the fact that this recce, the same conversations were happening between the director and the cinematographer, between the production designer and the assistant director. The only thing that was different was, so were I to be going into this house, and I would have a specific map of how I saw the space in my head, and I would go into this house and I would realize that actually the layout, the blueprint of the space was slightly different to what I had in my head. And I would say to the production designer, oh, it's a shame that the kitchen is not separated from the living room, because I had this idea of this interesting shot in which they could start off in the living space and then they would slowly move through into the kitchen, and that would be a different feel, for example. And the production designer would look at me and they would say, yeah, that is a shame, but kind of here's what we've got to work with.
Yeah,
and then
here's the flat.
Yeah, and then you would adjust the blueprint in your head, and you would maybe make some rewrites to make it work for the location that you have. Now, the only difference on the recce for this film, which was millions of pounds more, was when the director turns to the production designer and says, "It's a shame that there's not a wall separating the kitchen and the living space." The production designer simply says, okay, yeah. He turns to his people and says, okay, we're going to put a wall up here. What color would you like? Here's some swatches of potential wallpaper, so on and so forth. So, and really that was the only difference, is that they had more money, which obviously means money opens up other possibilities. But to be honest, money also brings with it a great deal of other problems as well. So it wasn't, and that story may make it sound like because they had more money, everything was so much easier. But as I say, money brings problems, and therefore you just end up dealing with the same sort of necessary, consistent, and constant problem solving at every stage. And it was actually quite rewarding to see as a young filmmaker that it's just the same stuff,
So give us an example of some of the problems that money you saw, that the kind of the extra money. What were some of those problems?
Well, I mean, for example, you go to a house, you find the perfect house, and then you need a green room. The green room for all of your cast and crew to be in a room that isn't being filmed in within the house. So you go to the next door neighbor and you say, we've got this film crew coming. Is there any chance that we could use your house for a couple of days when we're here in case anyone needs the toilet, and we can set up some craft services and stuff? And they say, absolutely not. No, this is our house. Why would we let people come into here? And then you open up the quote unquote checkbook and say, let's make this worth your while. And then suddenly within a 5-minute conversation, they're like, yeah, cool. And, you have my daughter as well. She can be in the film. And, so obviously money talks. But yeah, as I say, it also opens up a myriad of problems.
That's great. And so, in that case, money's sort of helping, right? You can, get your way out of trouble by opening up the checkbook. Mm-hmm. But was there a time on that you were kind of looking at things and thinking, weirdly enough, this would have been kind of easier to solve this problem if it was on a student film set? Sure.
I mean, obviously, when you're thinking about how you're going to cover a scene, and when I say cover, I mean all of the, as a director and a cinematographer, you're thinking about all the different angles that you want to achieve to create your shot list, and the coverage is just the entirety of that, shot list. When you have creative restraints, and lack of money is obviously a version of a creative restraint, you have to think, well, how can I cover this scene that tells the story in the best way possible for the materials that we have available to us. And there are far less creative restraints when you're able to throw money at things, which means I often find it's like if you don't have creative restraints, you have the problem of almost a paradox of choice. You have everything available to you, and when everything is available to you and you can do absolutely anything, suddenly it's very difficult to make a decision, to make a firm decision, to make a choice. I almost feel it's useful to have these creative restraints so that the decision making is far narrower. You have fewer choices, and therefore it's easier to make ultimately a decision. And there were a few incidences in which they'd gone for a shot in which it involved like a super techno crane, which is just like an unbelievably
building
fancy remote control. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a crane which can move in every which way direction and can be electronically controlled and all of these types of things. And it's a wonderful, amazing piece of equipment to look at. And then you look at the shot and just think, and of course, I'm sure they would have had their reasons for why they used it. But well, this could have been achieved in a much simpler way for far less time. Were you to shoot it handheld or shoot it on a slow moving track through the space rather than having the full techno crane. So I
was wondering actually about that in terms of the the added duration of things, right? Like when you are moving up scales, because you think, okay, you've got lots of people, and obviously they're well-drilled people. So sometimes on student films, going for another take from the moment you say turnover, which is, let's everyone know that you want to go for one, it can take a little bit of time for everyone to quickly get ready to actually go for the take. So you expect maybe that they're quicker on that front, but when you've got all the big, like a much bigger crew and all the additional equipment, how much slower does it actually move,
A great deal, a great deal slower. There's the simple answer. There were days in which you can be turning over for less than 2 pages a day, which, and it's 2 pages of a script a day, yeah, which is like incredible to think that you have the resources to be able to do that. And some of that is down to the director wanting to have many, many takes, and that's part of his process. But some of it is just down to the fact that the shot list that they would like to be able to create is very complicated. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes with all the extras involved as well, there's hundreds of people on set, and coordinating that amount of people to all be ready to for action when action is called, and then they have to go through the whole reset process and then ready for a second take. It takes a great deal of time.
It's so interesting. I think the time element, and also the psychological effect that slowness has. There are so many artists, in different media, actually, whether they are writers or painters or something, who actually value the act of speed, and that you can get kind of bogged down. There's the old script writing adage, if you're working at a script for more than 6 months, kind of just give it up, because it just becomes stale. It becomes a bit dead. And I think that there's something must be, but tell us, in that, is there a psychological impact of just kind of working that slowly that has a sort of knock-on psychological effect on set?
Well, I'd say that was something interesting for me, because in the past, from when I began getting interested in films, my experience on set, and I have worked as an assistant director on a few small gigs, but 99% of the time when I'm on set, I'm directing, and I've also written the project myself as well. So you come onto the set with a certain amount of energy that this project means everything to you. You've created this project from the ground up, such that you're on set for 3 days, for example, and you're making this film, and however long it takes is however long it takes, because this is everything to you. It was really interesting to be on set as someone who, although I obviously cared a great deal whether the film turns out well, and was doing everything in my power to play my role in allowing that to happen, but I wasn't the leader. And it's very interesting to see suddenly the energy levels of people who do this as more of a gig. The sound recorders will come onto this gig for the 7 weeks of the shooting, and then all of them were jumping onto another project immediately after that. And their full year is just jumping from gig to gig to gig. And it's not their project. They've not written this. And of course, like me, they all want it to turn out well. But when things start to get slow, it's very frustrating for everyone, because they're thinking, although of course they care, they want to have a life as well. They want to get home to their wife and kids, and so yeah, I think, and what you're saying about the importance of speed in creation, I kind of echo that myself as well, and that's something that I've always been very frustrated about when I'm making my own projects. And I think about how I can alter the process, the traditional filmmaking process, to make it work for me, to allow more of a speed, to allow a certain shot to be able to film it and then go for a second take immediately. So what I mean by that is I like to shoot as much handheld as possible. I like to come in and design a 360-degree lighting setup with whoever my cinematographer is, such that we don't need to think about, okay, we're moving on to the next shot, now we need to rejig the entire lighting setup for the next setup. And in as many cases as humanly possible, I try to use natural light. And it's all just about trying to create an energy on set for everyone, that we're always moving, we're always creating, and I think that keeps everyone's spirits up and keeps everyone's energy levels up.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I imagine there must also be that sense that you were talking about the Technicrane. You know, did you get a sense that at some time they were almost, you know, I suppose there must be a pressure if you're directing a, you know, let's say up to £10 million Netflix standalone film, that it's got to look big budget. You know, it's got to look, it's got to put its money on screen. So, you know, to some extent, when you could go handheld and do it all handheld, you think, I can't, because I've got to make it look big budget because I've got the budget. And so almost you start thinking, how can I use the Technicrane, which is going to be something that makes it look big budget? And can that get in the way of the storytelling? Did you feel that impulse was sort of there in any way?
I think it certainly can, although I do think that the director and the cinematographer were going for a very specific look. And this is why I think, you know, what I'm talking about the process that I'm trying to implement into my own work wouldn't have worked in this situation, because they were trying to recreate a look from, 50s and 60s neo-noir films, which is very... was it proscenium? Would that be the word that you would use? Very composed images, and there was a real, it was almost a character in itself, the visual language of it. So, and because I was in all of those meetings, I know that the choices that they were making visually, they came from somewhere that was emphasizing the storytelling, and storytelling was always first. Now, I was working with a group of very film literate, intelligent, creative people. I'm sure there are a number of incidences in which people will just want a super techno crane because they've got the money and why not, and they want to play with the big toys. I think, as long as we're always coming into something thinking, what is the best shot to tell the story, to communicate the emotion of the story to the audience? And sometimes that will be, if you have the money for it, sometimes that will be a super techno crane, or sometimes it will be, what if we shot this scene on an iPhone, and what would that do? And it's not about how much the shot costs, it's about how is this translating to the audience emotionally, and is it getting across to them what I want to be communicated? And that's the most important thing.
With that sort of scale and sheen, obviously, like Netflix shows, as you mentioned, obviously they've got these resources, they can use the techno crane and stuff like that, but they all have like a really high standard of quality, right? They always look at a certain caliber. And I wondered, from your perspective of being on the inside of that, what is the main reason for that? Is it the talent of the people involved? Is it the equipment that they've got access to? Or is it just the experience that they all have from having worked on so many things? I didn't know sort of which one you felt was coming into play, or imbalance maybe.
Yeah, I would kind of say all of the above. I certainly think experience is so worthwhile. You can come on the set and the director and the cinematographer will communicate the type of shot that they're trying to achieve to their technical camera and lighting team. And some of these people have been in the industry for 40, 50 years, and they've worked on everything you can imagine. And they're communicating a certain type of shot, which I'm thinking in my head, I have no idea how on earth that's even possible to do that. And the director and the cinematographer can't think of an idea themselves either, and they're very experienced intelligent people, but they know that it will be possible. They're just not entirely sure how to. And then you turn to this team of experienced technicians, and they just say in a very broad Cockney accent, you do this, 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 and then Bob's your uncle. And it's like, wow, that's come from knowing the equipment, knowing how it moves, knowing just years and years of experience. But to answer the question about why do Netflix films look a certain way, I'm not sure they do. I think there's not a Netflix look per se.
No, not in the way that maybe like if you see a trailer of like Apple TV ads seem a little bit more, I don't know, there seems like
clean.
There certainly seems like there's less handheld going on in Apple TV shows. I don't know if they have like a handheld limiter. But yeah, there is more dissimilarity. But I suppose the Netflix look that I was referring to is more of like it's a standard, right? It's like everything on there is like above a certain threshold.
Yeah, and as I say, I think that just comes down to the fact that Netflix are supporting filmmakers and artists who are very talented and know their stuff. And that comes from years of experience and dedication to the craft.
And Ben, let's just talk a little bit, if we can, about how you got into this world, because obviously you ended up going to the National Film and Television School, the NFTS, and we're going to be doing quite a lot of episodes based on sort of possible options for young people to choose in terms of education options. But let's rewind even beyond that. Sort of give us a sense of we like to get our guests on the pod to go through the therapy of working out, kind of thinking back to yourself as a teenager. Give us a picture of who was Ben, what kind of things were you up to at that stage that may or may not have informed kind of what you've gone on to do. What were you up to?
Yeah. So me as a kid, I was very, very insular, very introverted, didn't particularly enjoy going outside unless I really had to. I liked my safe spaces. I liked playing my PlayStation and playing on computer games. And I'd say...
Any particular favourite games?
Well, so I got really, really into Grand Theft Auto San Andreas when I was younger. And to the point...
So introverted Ben was at home running around beating people up on the streets.
And there was a particular level in San Andreas which I really struggled with. So I went onto the internet and found an internet forum, which now Reddit seems to have the monopoly on these kinds of things. But back in when would this have been?
The distant past,
2000, early 2000s. They had these forums, and there was a Grand Theft Auto forum, and I would go on and I would notice everyone had these little signatures at the bottom, which were little pieces of visual art, which were like 300 by 120 pixels, and they just created them on Facebook, not Facebook, on Photoshop, and they could be absolutely anything. And I was like, I went on to try and find a tutorial for Grand Theft Auto and ended up getting really interested in, wow, this is interesting digital art. I kind of want to be able to do that. I wonder how you do that. Started looking up tutorials for that, downloaded a trial of Photoshop, and got really, really into creating things visually on a computer. It was around the same time that Harry Potter came out. The first Harry Potter, I remember going to see it, and I thought, I want to be the person who makes the stuff come out of the wands that looks really cool. And I thought, well, I'll take my interest for creating this graphic design, these digital signatures, and I'll put that into a 3D space, and I'll get interested in being able to make the Expelliarmus or whatever it is, you know. And around about that same time, I was and this is when I think I was 17. So compared to some of the kids on YFA, I suppose you would say that I got the bug for filmmaking.
Yeah, you were late to the party, Ben.
Wasting your time. Outrageous.
What are you doing, man?
I know. But I went away on holiday with a group of friends just as I was leaving high school, and I bought myself a little digital camera just with the idea to take some pictures. I didn't have any motive behind it, but what I ended up doing was filming it all. And I filmed the holiday, and then I came home and I edited it together to a song that I liked at the time. And what ended up was I had a music video. I had no plan on doing that, but it was just something fun that I started doing when I got back from the holiday. And I screened the music video that I'd made to all of my friends who were on the holiday. And there was just a magical thing of just watching their faces all light up and having these memories imprinted in something that would last forever. And my parents saw what happened to me when I was making this or editing this film together. And it was like, I'm telling you that I was a very, very insular kid. My parents were like, who is this Ben suddenly? He's come completely out of his shell and has found a real passion for something. And I was very fortunate that my mum worked in careers. So she saw me with this passion for filmmaking, and she thought, well, I've got a great deal of networks on, from every walk of life. And she happened to have a friend whose son ran a production company in Dundee, and she hooked me up with his contact, and he kind of took me under his wing, so to speak, and I started working as a production assistant and a production runner on some of the music videos and short films that they were making. And at this point, I was really interested in the visual effects side of things and the editing side of things. But when I started shadowing him, watching him direct, something happened that it got to the point where I was like, I wanted to push him out of the way, and I wanted to direct the scene myself, because I thought, no, there's a better way to do this, and you're not seeing this. And obviously, hilarious thinking back, because I'm this 17-year-old kid, and he's a very experienced filmmaker in his 30s or whatever. But that feeling of like watching him direct, and I saw it in my head, the scene, and I saw all the ways that I could do it and what would happen if we did this and this and this. And then from then on, the visual effects thing went to one side. I was like, no, I want to be a director. I want to be a visual storyteller, because and I noticed it in myself. I'm saying the first time my parents noticed it in me, but then being on set on that film, I noticed it within me. I had this energy that it was like, this is what I need to do with my life. And I was very fortunate to have him who kind of ended up being a mentor for me for a year or two, which is so, so beneficial to have, certainly at the beginning. And he just taught me everything about, this is what a director does, this is what a writer does, this is what a producer, this is a cinematographer. And then alongside that, just continued to work as an assistant on a lot of their films, and just gained experience. It was
just
amazing.
Around it, just being part of it, which is kind of what we're hoping for a lot of young people who subscribe to this podcast, is that they can listen to this over time, and that by doing every week a different episode, that they just take a lot in, like in the water, you spend a lot of time around. Well, that's been great. Well, Ben, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and hearing about that show. I suppose we always like to end with a kind of time travel element. So if you had to go back in time and give teenage Ben, if you had to whisper in your ear a bit of sage advice to your young self, what would you be saying to introverted teenage Ben as he sort of looked at those things at the bottom of the video game? What advice would you be giving?
I'd say I mean, to that age of Ben, I'd just shake him and say, "Get a grip of yourself and go outside and see the world." But
that's good advice.
I would. Yeah, it is, but
it is good advice.
I would say to the Ben, once he got the bug for filmmaking, is don't be afraid of failure, and understand that as much as filmmaking is an artistic pursuit, it's also a craft skill, and the way that you hone and grow a craft skill is by continually practicing. And even if it's rubbish, you're still growing as a filmmaker and an artist. So continuing to make things, no matter how small they are. I just honestly, I wish I'd made more. I wish I'd just gone out and shot things on my phone constantly, come home, edited them together, learned from it, found some friends, made little films. And it's not to say that I wasn't making things, but God, I could have been doing a great deal more especially at an age where you have zero responsibilities out with school. It's like, what better time to just be exploring and experimenting with all that free time, especially if it's what you really enjoy doing. Just don't let fear of failure get in your way. You don't need to be Steven Spielberg after the first film, Be comfortable with it not being a creative genius straight away, or just be comfortable with not being a genius whatsoever, because very few of us ever will be. Make stuff.
Great advice. Make stuff. We love that. Very much the Young Film Academy spirit. Just get out there, do it. Don't sit around and talk about it, but do it. And we always filmmakers, we can all take that advice. Less sitting around talking about it, more getting out there and doing it. Right, Dan?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you can buy a Nike t-shirt, which is just do it at the same time, then you are on for a home run. In fact, do one better, buy some shorts that say just do it, and you can wear your YFA t-shirt, because we don't do shorts. And then that is
the perfect outfit.
Some black shorts that say just do it, and a red YFA t-shirt.
Are you plugging the merch then?
I am plugging the merch. It's not available online, so it's not really a hard.
You've got to come on some account to get that. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you on.
Thanks,
thank you for sharing your experiences of being in that environment. Many of us won't ever stand on a lots of millions of pound set and see it from the inside. So brilliant, and thank you so much for that and for joining us today.
Thank you both very much. It's been good fun.
Super cool. I would love to be on a Netflix set, personally, James. Don't know about you.
You will be. They want happen. You. Yeah, they want.
I'm manifesting it. So I write on enough post-it notes. Get me on a Netflix set.
Yeah, just keep telling yourself. No, it's definitely going to happen.
It will.
And I mean, I thought that was really interesting to hear from someone who's kind of really been in the heart of those things. And I suppose it was interesting to hear Ben talk about that thing which we've discussed before about creative restraint.
Yeah.
And that idea that actually, having too many options can be confusing, and that sometimes not having loads of stuff and creating stuff from not very much, it's what we talk about Young Film Academy. It's that idea you start with what you've got and then try and piece your thing together, and that actually that can be really beneficial.
100%. It's almost like it's scarier, right, to literally be handed a blank piece of paper and a pen and say go, than it is to actually have like a handful of things and try and make them work. Like it's a completely different skill. It's like those ideas don't come from somewhere. Christopher Nolan, who essentially is like a good example of a filmmaker with essentially a blank check, right? Like he makes a film, then he gets to make whatever film he wants, and it doesn't have to be based on IP, meaning intellectual property, like a franchise like Harry Potter and stuff. He can do anything, but he is constantly teetering with ideas. So at least he sort of knows where he's starting from scratch, and you don't know what you want to make. Like that's painful more than anything.
It is quite perfect. And that idea that money has, weirdly, he witnessed how the budget can bring you bigger problems. You've just got more people. I mean, I think always that's one of the things. on sets that I've produced, is just the more people, the more headache. I mean, it's, if you're working with 10 people, you can actually get things done pretty efficiently. If you're working with 50, 60, I mean, you just got basic problems like toilets and catering and, all those things. Where do people put up jackets? And, it's super, super kind of basic production stuff. And then you get into bigger, and then, as Ben said, the extras and the actors. And then suddenly you're into then the knock-on effect of that is how slow everything becomes. So, that thing of just feeling like you're crawling through treacle because you're doing 2 pages a day of stuff and not being able to turn up the dial of speed. I think that must be really challenging.
For sure. I know that, and like different directors like are aware of this. They know that sort of like big sets can be stifling and stuff. David Fincher famously apparently prefers to spend his budget on more time than on a bigger crew. So he'll take the bonus crew budget and really sort of roll out the schedule with like a rolling pin. So he has a skeleton crew that are super talented, that just take a little bit longer to do things. But it also means that the actors get a lot longer to do their performances, and he famously likes to get the actors to do 100 takes or whatnot. So
yeah, that is really interesting. And that idea, I think, was quite inspiring for young listeners about that story is, that sense that people think that one day that there will be enough money or that people with the money never have these problems, and that, therefore you have to fight through all these, swamps and problems as a young filmmaker with no resources, and that one day it'll be different. And it's not. It's not different. I mean, yes, someone puts a wall up if you want, and yes, someone will find you parking, and but basically, you're just doing the same stuff on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And so, as Ben, and that was interesting at the end of, when Ben actually said, what would the advice I'd give to my young self? And he's just like, get out there and do stuff. Just do more. When there's actually nothing at stake, when there's nobody worrying about whether it really works or it doesn't, just make more stuff, do more. And I thought that was a really inspiring note for everyone. Get out with your phone, do it. It's what we do at Young Film Academy all the time, right, Dan? It's just like, come on, guys, let's make stuff. Let's not just sit around and talk about it.
Let's get up and go. And that's where deadlines help as well, right? It's like, I'm going to make something by the end of a certain point. And guess what? That film made is still better than your great film that's not been made. Like, same thing with scripts,
It's not been made.
Yeah. And Danny Boyle, by the way, is another sort of director, right? He went to Hollywood, in air quotes, after successes with his films like Shallow Grave, I think it was after then. He then went and did The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, a film that apparently is very good, but just not many people have seen. And he just had a not very fun time making that film because he's used to being resourceful. He's used to doing that thing of just getting up and going, just like making something really cool. Making it the best it can be, despite it's like the things drawing it back, and the opposite isn't always what you want. And
actually, that's made me think of something that I found true for myself, is that idea of expectation. Because with money and budget comes expectation, right? If someone's if you're working on a £10 million pound show, there's that real sense that you've got a lot at stake, and sometimes that creatively that can be again a bit stifling, especially when you're starting out. And the joy of kind of having nothing at stake, and because you're spending no money or close to no money, and we'll talk about that in another episode. Is never no money, but but virtually nothing. Is just you can have fun with it and just enjoy the process and do all the learning, and feel creatively really free. And often that can you make choices that you wouldn't make if you were on that. If you were directing that 10 million Netflix show, you wouldn't take that choice because it's too risky.
Yeah, 100%. Be brave.
And what did you make of that?
Stuff.
What did you? Yeah, be brave. Yeah, totally. And what did you make of that thing? Ben was talking about himself as a teenager and as a bit of an introvert, and that kind of when he discovered this medium of putting images together, telling stories, it started to have an effect on him. I didn't know about you, but that really made me think about so many students at Young Film Academy that we see.
I was thinking that. I actually wrote that down in my notes. I don't know if you can see. It says on my notepad here.
Yeah,
it says,
this is great radio, Dan.
So I'm holding up a poster to a camera. Coming out of with a mouse on my finger, like a mouse finger puppet. I don't know if you noticed that as well.
Yeah, see that.
Quality audio content. Coming out of your shell. Because we do see that time and time again, genuinely. People that even come with like a parental set expectation of like they might not last the week. and they leave ending up having done 2 weeks rather than one, and it's just totally. It's magical. It's about finding your thing, I think, isn't it? It's finding that thing that gets you out.
Because we see this a lot at the schools we work at too, where actually a lot of the time we'll go into a school, we'll do a one-day film school workshop, and we'll get all the kids at school making films. And often the teachers will say at the end of the day, do you know what was really interesting for us was that X, Y, Z students who don't actually usually engage and maybe a struggle kind of academically, they were the most engaged, and it was amazing to see them apply themselves because we've never seen them apply themselves to anything before. And we kind of question that and think, why is that? And I think it's exactly what you're saying. Sometimes you just need to find a different language to express yourself. And often this language of filmmaking and everything that comes with it, performing, being in it, being around it, is just not a language that young people have had a chance to talk in. And they start talking in it and they're like, this is my language. And they can really come out of themselves. And so many parents at the end of whether it's summer camp or a 4-day film school or the screenings at the BFI Academy at the end of the year, the BFI South Bank, they'll come up to us and say, wow, my son or daughter, they're Ben Hunter. I mean, they're introverted. They spend a lot of time in front of a screen, and suddenly I saw them engaging. I saw them light up. They just got a buzz out of this that I've never seen, and that was, it was great.
It's really cool. And creativity sort of, I don't know, it's just one of those things. It often starts off very personal. It's your own sort of discovery, and it's amazing when people find that, when people see, oh wow, I can do this, but then it can operate at different levels and at different scales, and it's just really nice. Speaking of
it was lovely.
Should we take a letter, James? Should we take a letter from one of our?
Let's take it. Has anyone written in about whether a student film is like a Netflix show or not?
No,
has anyone written in on that?
Not like a Netflix show. Well, sort of. Maybe not. What's it called? Netflix originals. But someone has asked if there are any student films on Netflix. So.
I see what they're doing there. They were taking the two concepts. Are there any student films on Netflix? That's a really good question.
Wait,
my
second.
understanding, I would be.
This is from Jerome in Dalston. There you go. Hi, Jerome.
How old is Jerome?
19.
So, Jerome, great question. My understanding is I don't think so. Because obviously Netflix is quite a corporate platform, and it kind of creates a lot of its own content, and that it buys in is probably kind of above what is usual student sort of quality content. But I think that what that brings up is really interesting, which is basically saying, can you, as a student filmmaker, make something that competes with the big boys? Basically, is this kind of at the heart of that question. And I think what I would say to you, Jerome, is if you haven't seen, well, you are 19, so you can see it. It is, I think it's an 18. It's the Blair Witch Project, which when I was sort of growing up in the independent film world was used as the great example of, look what you can do. And it was made in America, and it was made by a group of film students. And they literally went into the woods with a couple of cameras, borrowed off their film school, and they made a horror film. And it became an absolute worldwide smash hit. And it spawned, many of those kind of low budget horrors that Paranormal Activity, etc., were all trying to basically emulate the success of the Blair Witch Project. And actually, as a producer, I would use it for years, to entice investment, because you could say to people, like, if you had invested £1 in the Blair Witch Project, you would have got 1,000 back, or whatever the crazy numbers were. And the fact that it was the 1 in a million that did that, they didn't have to know that. So it is possible. I'm not sure it's possible quite to get it on Netflix yet, although apparently there are short films on Netflix, Dan. Did you know there are short films?
I didn't. I was aware of only one instance of short films, which was it Fincher again who did like this sci-fi medley thing, where it was like a series of, it was like a collection of short form content, and they were all really weird. And someone will know the name of that thing, and
they're shouting now.
I don't know, some kind of collective thing. Yeah,
so like Black Mirror, but short Black Mirror episodes.
Yes, but they got like a collection of different artists to do it. So, but that was like a one collective thing. So it was put on there as a series, basically. So I didn't know about short films.
So apparently there are some. Apparently you can't search for short films, which is slightly annoying as a context. But there are loads of short films available online and stuff. So do watch them, obviously, because that's where, we suggest you cut your teeth, guys out there, if you're sort of honing your craft. Talking of honing your craft, actually, Ben did say that thing about kind of go out there, make stuff. And it reminded me of that that 10,000 hours thing, the sort of the Malcolm Gladwell idea that you've got to get out there and do whatever it is you're going to do. It takes about 10,000 hours of practice to become really good at it. And with filmmaking, how difficult that is, because, we've discussed that, Dan, that actually, every film, when you're doing it at scale, takes so much money and time and effort that actually, even at the very top of their game, how much time on sets are practitioners, having. Depends what you're doing, of course. If you're a sound recordist or a DP, you're probably doing a hell of a lot, but some of the creatives in the team aren't. So I think, again, it comes back to do your 10,000 hours training now. Get out there, make stuff, do those hours, and you'll really hone your craft.
100%. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. As always, been a blast. And you can email your questions to us. So if you have questions for us, you can email podcasts@youngfilmacademy.co.uk. So there you go. Or podcaster, singular, not plural. But thank you. And we will see you next week with another episode.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
See you later.